what makes this meta low skill. The skill difference between a good player and a bad player is like very small now. So it's hard to abuse, but I think there's a few things I can do to abuse this shit-ass meta. I was doing my research yesterday off stream, okay? I was talking to a lot of people, okay? Because genuinely, I was still hoping I was wrong. Right? Like, I was hoping that I was... Like, I'm probably... Don't get me wrong, I'm probably still overreacting a tiny bit. I'm a pretty emotional person when it comes to the game, at least, because I love the game. But then I talked to other people that were actually not as biased, I'd say. And they confirmed, like, what I was thinking without me actually telling them how I felt. For example, I messaged Crayon, right? And I was like... I messaged him and I said, am I coping when I feel like this patch is absolute trash, right? And then he said... Yeah, deathballing is super good. I think all the nerfs were good, but a lot of the jungle changes were kind of bad. 10-minute saves are bad. All the objectives at 10 minutes is just fight forever. They need to balance both sides. Like, we don't want people to just sit in the jungle and never fight, which I agree with, right? But at the same time, you can't make fighting perma the only thing, because now, like, where's the reason to pick late game characters? Just play Abrams. Fight for 20 minutes, win the game. And he also says it feels like Marvel Rivals to him. Yeah, I mean, we talked to Ranger yesterday. I talked to quite a few people. I talked to Leffa. I asked around. I'm not gonna call you shit, but I think it comes more so from the high level perspective. I'm not saying I'm like some big brain gamer, but I think my macro is very smart. I find it very hard to explain what I'm doing during the game, but I think my choices are really smart sometimes, macro-wise, okay? I'm not talking about like micro, I'm talking about if I'm like clear in the head and I make good macro choices. The reason I get ahead so much in every game I play is not because I AFK farm jungle. Everyone can do that, right? Everyone can do that. It's because I do it more efficiently than the average player, by far, right? I think my macro is very good, right? Like, if you ask me about like my goods and bads about like me as a player, I think you can agree. Like, my movement is shit. I overcommit and play probably too aggressive, but my macro is really strong and my aim is really good. I think that's the two main positives and negatives I have as a player, right? So I think it does affect me more than the average person, this patch. What we're gonna do is, I'm just gonna pick brain-dead dumb characters like Calico, and I'm just gonna sit on lane like Yoshi wants me to. I'm gonna use 0 brain cells. I almost want to do an experiment where I sit on the same lane for the entire game. I already hated before the type of player that was not thinking and that was just sitting with other people non-stop, right? There was already a low skill strat, and now you're being rewarded for being a pussy, basically, actually kinda, right? Right now, if you sit on lane S2 at any moment in the game, you're not losing any money. Because even sitting on the lane S2, you will earn as much money, if not more, than a person that is actually trying to jungle, right? So there is no punishment for you just stacking, which means there's also no punishment for you playing badly, because that also means in a team fight, if anyone tries to gank you, they need at least 3 people, unless you misplay, right? If they gank with 2 people, you have another person on your lane and you barely can die, right? You have to play really poorly to die instantly in a 2v2. So it encourages bad gameplay. Am I biased because my role is affected the most? Like the hard farmer role? Sure. Can there be a good middle ground that makes every playstyle viable? I think so. That was the beauty about this game. And I think up until this patch, every playstyle was viable. Like, there were heroes that were good, there were heroes that are bad, but every playstyle was viable. Hard carry characters had their place, gankers had their place, right? Like Moon Krill. Supports had their place, like Kelvin, or mid-game, like carries, like Pocket and Lash, right? Everyone had their place. And now there's actually no point in playing a character that needs farm anymore, because you can't get farm. You just pick a character that's really strong at teamfights at all times. Which, by the way, is also, funnily enough, like one of the characters that require the least skill, like this person here. You should realize that this patch is the make or break point for this game. Because if this patch is received well enough, we will turn into Marvel Rivals unironically. And that's my opinion. If enough people enjoy this patch, this game, and the depth of this game is going to be dumbed down for idiots and will have a shell of its former self. That's my opinion. And you can disagree. That's the beauty about opinions, you know? Everyone is entitled to their own. Yeah, and Marvel Rivals is doing good. I'm not saying it's not doing good. I'm saying this game is going to turn into Marvel Rivals a really casual game that doesn't require a lot of skill. If I wanted this game to turn into Rivals, I might as well play Rivals in the first place. Rivals is a fun party game with friends that doesn't require any brain cells. And people always misunderstand this. It's not about the jungle or not the jungle. It's just about not having the choice anymore. If I come back from fucking spawn, there was always the choice of like, if I have a farm character, like, do I want to farm this jungle? Right? Or do I want to go to the lane and farm the fucking lane? And the thing is, now, like this is worth nothing. Like, most people don't understand. They still farm the jungle and they think it's good. Until you look at the fucking number. 65 souls. 65 souls. Okay? 65. Okay? You know how much this jungle camp gave me? 65 times 3. That is less than 2 fucking lane creeps. Less than 2. This jungle camp is worth less than half than one single lane creep wave on any wave. This wave here, this jungle camp, sorry. 163 plus 65. This creep camp is worth less than 3 creeps on the lane. And by the way, we're not talking about Cold Front or any nerfs of the patch. Cold Front did need a nerf, and I'm glad they nerfed it. Holiday needed a nerf. I'm glad they nerfed Holiday. Sinclair is still OP, by the way. But the patch, the balance changes of the items were good. The main thing that I'm really upset about is not being able to do anything other than sit on lane at 8 minutes. Because that has always been a thing in this game. You were always able to either stay on, like, there was always a trade-off, right? Okay, like, at 8 minutes. You're in a duo lane at 8 minutes, right? At 8 minutes, the creeps don't share souls anymore, right? You would only get half, or 60% it is now, right? So you had to always make the choice at 8 minutes. You had, like, 4 choices, okay? 4. Okay? Choice number 1 was stay on the lane with your team partner on the lane and try to push. Okay? That's choice number 1. Choice number 2 was rotate and farm your jungle. Right? Choice number 2. Choice number 3 was rotate to another lane, gank, get a kill there and push that lane. And choice number 4 was invade their jungle and steal their jungle or kill someone in their jungle. Right? So technically there were 5 choices. Right? And every single one of those choices I just mentioned has an upside and a downside, okay? If I stay on lane, the downside was I would earn less money because, again, at 8 minutes, right? Creeps wouldn't share anymore in souls, so you would get less money. But the upside of staying in lane was, A, your tower was safer, and B, there was a higher chance of you actually killing the enemy tower or even killing the enemy walker and putting more pressure on the enemy, okay? So that was the upsides and downsides, okay? Downsides for going to your jungle and farming is you would lose pressure on the enemy lane. There was likely a chance that the enemy could punish your teammates, right? Push your lanes. But on the upside, you would get more gold, okay? And this is not about last patch. This has always been the case. I'm not talking about sinner sacrifices here, right? Every single patch we had in Deadlock, there was always a trade-off. And then there was the third option, right? Which was ganking another lane where you would again lose money because you would rotate, but there was a really high upside because if you got a kill on another lane, which was very likely, right, you would punish them twice. A, by getting money for kills, and B, by pushing that objective, right? Because ganking obviously is less predictable to the enemy team than you just sitting on lane, okay? And then the last option was invading the enemy jungle, which upside was, it was very high risk, high reward, because the upside was you would get their money, which is worth like even more than getting your side of the jungle, right? Or you would get a kill in their jungle, which would give you a big head start. But the downside was it was really risky. There was a chance you wouldn't get any of the jungle. There was a chance you would die in their jungle, right? And there was a chance that the enemy would actually stop you from taking their jungle, so you would waste your time, okay? So we talked about 5 options, and all of them had upsides and downsides. In this patch, we have 1 option. Maybe 2, arguably. There is no choices anymore, okay? There is no choices anymore. There's A, not enough money to make it worth it, and B, there's probably none of the enemy players there to even kill, right? So the only two choices you have now is sitting on lane, not thinking at all, or ganking another lane, which is also worse than before, but that's more so because of the 3-lane match map, because the only rotation you can really do is using the zipline, right? Like you can't really walk over. You can, but it's like takes longer, right? So we went from 5 different choices to 1.5, and that's really unhealthy for the game because it promotes garbage ass gameplay. And yes, I agree, the balance is a work in progress, yes. And I don't think this will stay the same way forever. The reason I feel so strongly about this patch is because A, I think it's the worst patch ever, but more so that a lot of people are positive about this patch. I think being positive about this patch has the chance to ruin this game. Because the one thing this game has that other games don't have is the in-depth mechanics. It's very complicated and it's very high skill. And if we remove choices, if we remove a lot of choices from this game, we dump the game down and we turn it into Marvel Rivals or we turn it into Overwatch 2. This is what happened. This is what killed Overwatch. In Overwatch 1, people were complaining about one character being strong, Tracer, so they added Brick and ruined the game for 2 years because they listened to casuals. Because casuals couldn't deal with Tracer. Not because Tracer was OP, but because they were bad players. In Overwatch, people were complaining about 2 tanks being oppressive, so they just removed one and dumped the game down to Overwatch 2, where we only have 1 tank, and now we're in the exact same spot where the tank is just OP and the game is really unfun. I don't want this game to turn into fucking Marvel Rivals, and neither should you if you care about this game. Because if you want this game to turn into Marvel Rivals, why not play Marvel Rivals in the first place, right? Is splitting lane really more money for both people at 8 minutes? It's the same amount of money than before, right? Which is less at 8 minutes, but it's still more than you going to the jungle. That's a pretty crazy comparison. Of course we're not there yet. Of course this game is not dumped down to the point of Marvel Rivals and Overwatch yet. But if you support this kind of patch that dumps the game down massively, then we can get there. New tier 2s are literally about the same money as the old tier 1. That's how bad the jungle is now. So we should just never jungle. Jungle is still viable if you're winning at like 20 minutes because you can clear it insanely fast because you have a lot of money. Before that, you probably don't jungle. You just perma-fight. Which also means if you win your lane, you probably win the game now, you know? Because there's no comeback mechanic for the enemy. They can't come back by invading your jungle because there's no one there. They can't farm their jungle to come back because they don't get enough money. So all they can do is continue to fight, which means if everyone continues fighting, the team with more money will win because they have more money. So the only matchup that matters now is laning. And I'm not saying laning shouldn't matter at all, but right now you just pick a lane bully that is insanely good early and mid game and you win the game.